So India's AFC Women's Asia Cup campaign has ended in heartbreak. There was a simple mathematical equation required to be solved by the Indian team to ensure that they would have actually made it through automatically to the next round. But unfortunately, all of that relied on India actually beating Chinese Taipei by a 2-goal margin. Unfortunately, even still, they ended up losing 3-1, which meant that instead of winning by a 2-goal margin, they lost by a 2-goal margin. Having collected 0 points, there is no chance of them making it through. They have in fact been eliminated. And me and Harshad are of course going to discuss how the match played out, which was a bit unfortunate in so many ways. And of course, why it is that we keep saying 2-goal win was all that you needed. And of course, look at it from the broader spectrum of things. Another tournament and more disappointment is what we're facing.
And why we were all rooting for this Indian team, Shane, because it came with so much hope, much more hope than what the Indian men's football team is offering at this point. And recent results for this Indian women's team was such that you were attracted towards it. You wanted them to do well because you could see there be some sort of an upward trajectory in Indian football, which has been hard to find for the average Indian football fan. And so you thought at the start of this tournament, okay, 3 games. Yes, Japan, unfortunate that you've been drawn into the same group as Japan are. Top continental side, number 8 in the world, etc., etc. So much going their way as far as rankings are concerned. But India, while the weakest in that particular grouping, I think 67 is where the Indian football women's team ranks in the FIFA rankings, and everyone else in the group came with a much better ranking. But after that spirited show that you saw in the second half of that Vietnam game, your hopes were there. Yes, against Japan, you didn't have a lot of hopes, and that performance was a confidence deflator, if not more. So. And then you come into this particular match hoping that, okay, you would have probably kept things aside, and knowing that equation very well, which we will talk about, you just needed a 2-zip win. Unfortunate that you could not get that. You go down in this particular match as well. Then, of course, there was a goal that was pulled back, but ultimately that 2-0 win is what India needed. But unfortunate that they've ended on the losing side again.
In fact, it's funny because you could flip the scoreline round the other way and India would still be going through.
Yeah.
They needed not just a 2-0, but they could be 3-1, could be 4-2, it could be 5-3. Goal difference of 2 was the key. Because, of course, and we'll get to the details of it in just a bit, goal difference is fairly irrelevant here. Now, obviously, a lot of y'all would be thinking, wait, they lost 11-0 to Japan. How is it possible that they could still be in? So, yes, you're right. This is how the table currently stands, and it does not, by any stretch of the imagination, make for pretty viewing. Japan topped the group, having won all 3 of their games. Chinese Taipei won 2. Vietnam won 1. Now, again, the goal difference part is where I really want your eyes to go, because India ended with a goal difference of -14, and prior to this it was -12. Even keeping that in mind, you're asking, how is it that they could have possibly trumped Chinese Taipei? Well, the key lies in the fact that goal difference is not something that's considered for AFC tournaments. They look at the head-to-head. Basis head-to-head, assuming that Chinese Taipei, Vietnam and India were all tied on 3 points, then what they do is look at the games in between all of those, and if India had a 2-goal advantage, they would have actually been the top team among the 3 basis goal difference in those 3.
Then you would have seen how many goals throughout these games between the tied teams that India had scored and India had conceded. So why we're insisting on 2-zip is because remember, you'd lost 2-1 to Vietnam, but remember, you scored the 1 goal. Today, had you scored 2, then that would have made it 3-1. In comparison, though, Chinese Taipei did not score those many goals between the 3 teams, amongst the 3 teams that were tied. Vietnam lost today, and that is exactly what you were hoping for, that Vietnam lose today and their points tally remains at 3, which it does at this particular point. However, that 2-0 margin eluded you on the day, and that would have just, at the start given you enough hope that yes, it's perhaps possible. You'll still have to dig in deep to be able to get that win against Chinese Taipei. Unfortunate that it didn't happen, but Shane will talk us through about what exactly did he see throughout the course of the match, the nitty-gritties of it, and where India put a couple of wrong steps.
See, I think the one thing was, of course, not getting that goal first.
Yeah.
You needed to score first. You came out, and it's not as if they didn't come out with the intention to do it. But once you fall 1-0 behind, then again the onus is very much on you, because at that point in time, the opposing team knows that you're looking for 3 goals. Yeah. If you're looking for 3 goals, the team can sit back, defend, but they didn't do that. They actually ended up getting a second goal. So you were actually then very much up against it. Manisha had got the equalizing goal, if memory serves me right, with the equalizing goal, yes. So yeah, they got that penalty, and the penalty also was a bit unfortunate in terms of how it went in, by the way, because the player, she actually managed
time as well.
No, added time, and that's worse. I'll tell you how it played out. The save was made, the goalkeeper parried it onto the post, it hit the keeper's head and went in. That is unlucky. That is very unlucky, but it is, of course, you shouldn't have conceded the penalty in the first place. So in that sense, you're saying 2-1 down at half time. You need, again, what? You need 3 goals coming in the second half, and those 3 goals were never coming, because Chinese Taipei were very comfortable in the second half. India made changes, they did everything, but got picked off by 1 goal in the counter, and that was it. That's all she wrote. Done, dusted. The campaign was over. And in case those of you are wondering why it is we keep talking about, oh, you know, India can qualify for the World Cup, it's because, again, I'll just briefly explain. In the Women's World Cup, they look at qualification directly from the AFC Women's Asia Cup. All you had to do was make the quarterfinals to be in with a chance, make the quarterfinals, which is the round after this, and you would have at least been guaranteed a playoff spot. Somehow, someway, if you made the semi-finals, if you were one of the 4 teams in the semis, you were automatically qualified. So you actually just needed 2 wins after this, and knockouts are a very funny game. You don't know sometimes how the luck of the draw goes. If you had a favorable quarterfinal draw, you could have very well been through. And that's the heartbreaking part.
And there was also this golden chance of sorts, you know, otherwise in most competitions, what do you see? The top 2 teams qualify. Here, 4 teams, and then the 3rd best team also from a couple of groups would then have gone through. So a 3rd place qualification would also have just about done the job for you. But again, so close yet so far. That's been the story of Indian football, both men's and women's football. And yet again, we find ourselves on the very same edge.
I mean, let's also be fair. At least the women's team, I will give them that credit, qualified for the cup purely on merit. That is an impressive accomplishment. Unfortunately, they always were up against it in the group a little bit, because they would have needed to punch above their weight, come what may. You had Japan, a game which was basically a write-off. You're looking at Chinese Taipei and Vietnam thinking, okay, maybe these are games we can get points. If you would have gotten 4 points of them, still a possibility. Unfortunately, 0 points. But that is it. You live and you learn, and one really hopes that there is something more that comes in the next tournament, and that this isn't simply a case of, you know, this being the highlight, because that tends to have become the worry. I remember the men's team, when they performed well in the AFC Asia Cup in 2019. People thought, okay, now this is a stepping stone. You made it in 2023, got hammered, and you've not qualified for 2027.
Even I would say a couple of years back, Shane, where you thought that, you know, the SAF win was there, the Intercontinental Cup was also there, although small competitions when compared to the AFC Asian Cup, but you thought that yes, you were still getting, you were getting back on your feet. Chetri was still around at that time, then he retires, and then you had to go back to him again. The qualifiers did not go to your liking, and it's been a landslide since then for Indian football.
Absolutely, but that brings an end. Unfortunately, our coverage of this tournament would have been fun, cheering for the team if they were coming this close to a World Cup. But as I say, you live and you learn. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this video. As always, if you enjoy our work, like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon, also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, X and Facebook. Stay tuned though for more such updates and live coverage from the world of sport.